we work with Trevor at Microsoft Ventures because of his company Lean Startup Machine, which runs workshops around the world on the lean process, and it's a 3-day weekend workshop. It's super intense. It's all about idea validation, and there's no software development or anything like that. So it's all about really trying to find the product market fit between your solution and the customer segment, or rather, the other way around is about identifying the proper customer segment, figuring out what their problem is, and then crafting a solution based on that. So very happy to have him here. He's one of the leading thought, I guess, one of the prominent thought leaders these days on lean startups. So hopefully he has a great presentation for you guys with some good content, and then we'll open it up to questions, and hope you guys will be able to take advantage of having him here. So Trevor, as I've said, is the turned.
Cool. So I'll tell you guys a little bit more background. So I tried to start a bunch of companies in college, and many of them failed. And I also organized hackathons, and I found that none of the ideas that were created at hackathons actually ended up becoming businesses, which was what my original intention was. And one of my mentors is a prominent VC in New York, and he taught a class in my college that talked about, the most important thing to do on day one is sales. And he kind of was talking a little bit about Lean Startup really before there was a Lean Startup. And so when I came upon Eric Ries and his blog, I naturally gravitated towards it. And at the first Lean Startup Machine, the whole idea was, instead of a hackathon for 24 hours, what if we just tried to sell our product for 24 hours, and we pivoted if it wasn't working?
Mm-hmm.
And the result was really surprising, because I was used to business plan competitions and other things where actually in my original class, he told us that if anyone got $1 in real revenue, we would get an automatic A. And
really?
It was a really competitive class. It's actually Stern School of Business, where my classmates would go to the professor's office and cry if they didn't get an A, to try and coerce their way to getting a better grade. And not one person got $1 in revenue on their products. And because people spent too much time thinking about what the features the product should be, too much time thinking about what the business model is going to be, for example, instead of just going and talking to customers right away and trying to sell them something. So it's exciting that you guys are taking a lean approach in this program. It's really exciting, and it's actually pretty unprecedented, because for the longest time, most entrepreneurship programs taught kind of skills that were only really useful in big companies. It's really the first time that we have a science around starting a startup. And the whole idea behind Lean Startup is really predicated on the fact that most startups fail because of market risk, and because they build things that their customers don't want, or they spend too much time on a product that nobody wants. They don't really realize fast enough that what they're doing doesn't have a place in the market. They don't pivot fast enough. So really, the original thesis from Eric's old book is that the amount of money that you have to spend in your company, right? In a venture-backed company, you have $1 million or something, and that will give you a year of time. But really, that year is not so that you can spend all the money on one idea. That money is really so you can pivot as many times. The more times you can pivot, the more runway you have, because the more experiments you can test if your idea is viable. And as soon as you find a viable opportunity, that's when you're successful. And so, in my companies, failure is a little bit of a weird thing, because as an entrepreneur, the question is when do you fail? Do you fail when you run out of money? Do you fail when you kind of give up? It's also not really clear, when no one wants your product. So, in my company, it took me 6 months. I was in college, and I didn't need to spend money because I was just doing my company in between classes. So in a sense, there wasn't really a failure. I just gave up after 6 months because it wasn't working. right? But the truth is that I failed much earlier than that. I didn't need to spend 6 months on that product. And when I began to understand Lean Startup method, I was able to show within one day that was not a viable opportunity, because I focused on measuring my customer feedback on that very first day. Whereas just running the company in kind of the way that I felt was intuitive, and the way that I had understood from the media to start a business and read in books at the time, I spent 6 months. At the end of 6 months, I just gave up because I didn't know why it wasn't working. And actually, there were more fights with my co-founders. I blamed them, of course, right? Didn't blame myself. Actually, I blamed my kind of inability to sell. I didn't blame the fact that I just chose the wrong business. So in Lean Startup, there's really only 3 concepts that kind of make up Lean Startup. So the first one I just talked about one of them. It's called the pivot, right? And so the fact that most startups fail because of market risk. Now, not every startup fails because of market risk, but you should be able to know if you're not working on a cure to cancer or something that's going to cost you $1 billion or $100 million to develop, you're probably really dealing with market risk, and there's probably a lot of ways to test that people want to use your product, right? If you're selling something that is a commodity, or you're working in an existing business, or you're selling something that everybody wants, everybody wants teleportation, right? Everybody wants a cure for a disease that they don't have, right? But does someone want a new iPhone app, or does someone want a type of marketplace online? Those are primarily market risk businesses, and the vast majority are. So the whole idea of the pivot came from the fact that most successful startups actually had a pivot during the course of their operation. So YouTube started as an online dating site. Flickr started as an online game. PayPal started as payments over the Palm Pilot. Groupon started as an online petitioning website. Twitter started as a podcasting website called Odeo. And Instagram started as a location-based social network that was competing with Foursquare. They all started as one idea, and then they learned something in the market, completely and fundamentally changed while keeping something that the team was passionate about, and found a big business. Right? So to some extent, what we're saying is that you have to choose the right business, as opposed to you can't just pick a business and make it work. Right? You have to find a business the market is willing to accept and is ready for and needs. And so the next concept of the pivot is called the minimum viable product. And the minimum viable product is, how do we expend minimal effort and resources to figure out if we're in the direction of something that people really want. Right? And so it doesn't have to be a product. It essentially means an experiment where you're testing what we call the riskiest assumption. And most of the time the risky assumption is, does anyone care about this? So the irony, right, is that when you take the minimum viable product approach, it dramatically changes what you're going to do. Because instead of thinking of as an entrepreneur, you have, in order for you to be in this program right now, in order for you to be an entrepreneur, you have to have an incredible amount of passion, and you have to be a little bit different than everybody else. And so by that disposition, your ideas are going to be really big, and you're going to be more of a visionary. But the trouble is that it makes it hard for you to think really small, right? You have to think really small and extremely short term in order to build the right minimum viable product. And you actually have to almost forego what you want to do and what you're dreaming about every night in order to really find if there's anyone out there that wants this, and potentially someone's not going to want it. And that's a little bit scary. So the third concept is called early adopters. So believe it or not, there are customers out there who are excited to try a version of your product that is really bad. Right? These are called early adopters. They actually prefer a product that is buggy, that doesn't work, or isn't even real. That's just a landing page that leads to a coming soon form. There are people that they want to do that. That's what they want to do. And these are people that they have the problem you're trying to solve so bad that they'll do anything to solve it. So we call these people cookie monsters. And so if you're out doing customer development, you're looking for people who, when they hear about your idea or you mention the problem you're solving, their eyes open up all the way. Their attention completely shifts towards you, and it's like the cookie monster who just found a cookie. They're going crazy. We like to say that they're foaming at the mouth, and they're grabbing you by the collar of your shirt to beg you for a solution to the problem. And they generally have 5 traits. So they have the problem you think they have. They know it, right? So this is the thing. Early adopters always know they have the problem. So they want until I show it to them. The mass market doesn't know. Early adopters do know. And early adopters have money to spend for it. They're actually searching for a solution, and they've probably even tried to solve the solution themselves with a hack together solution. And I've seen this, almost 1,000 times through the workshops, because we've done, 150 workshops around the world in 50 cities. Over 1,000 companies have gone through it. And if you can't find early adopters, it means that nobody wants your product. And that's a hard reality for entrepreneurs, especially if you're passionate about your idea. And so really the goal of these two things, kind of like the vision of Lean Startup, is really that you're making more data-driven decisions, right? You're able to work better as a team, right? It's not just all about you. Like, there's a lot of implications of Lean Startup to society in general, which is why you might see a trend of like people applying Lean to almost everything. And it allows you to move faster. For me, it saved me it could have saved me 6 months, but I really proved that in one day it could take me a lot further. And I'm going to actually share the story with you. So let's go into a tool. Let's go into really like the specifics and nitty-gritty of doing an MVP and running an experiment. So we actually have a tool for this called the experiment board. Now, Murat knows that I'm not really a fan of the Bismol canvas. And I'll talk about why. It's primarily because we used it in our workshop in the very early days. I've been doing this company for 3 years. In the very beginning, we used the Bismol canvas, and we just found that it wasn't really relevant to early stage startups. And it actually developed for big companies. If you look at the kind of the history of it, and I don't really know why Steve Blank kind of adopted it into his whole process, but most of the boxes aren't probably that relevant for you guys right now, right? I mean, the most important one is the customer. You can kind of forget all the other boxes. Really, what you need to focus on is the customer box if you're just starting. I mean, I think some of you might be a little further along, but nonetheless, I find almost any startup I talk to could focus a little bit more on their customer. And you need to focus on the problem and the solution. And so the other stuff like the cost structure isn't really important, and it doesn't really make sense either. Like really what you want to know is the cost per acquisition. If you're doing a tech startup, the cost structure in startups is like you have to hire people. That's really what you have to do. Like you're not, you're hiring or anything. Key partners, you guys probably don't need partners. I forget the rest of the boxes. But let me tell you.
No, I love just for everyone's background. Trevor and I often have we've had at least 2 heated debates about business model canvas versus his the tool that Lean Startup Machine has started using because of their exposure and working with almost 1,000 companies or startups to really find what, at that super early stage of idea validation, what are the most critical components. And so the way that I rationalize our debate is that Trevor really has figured out a great way to zoom in on the value prop and the customer segments and making sure that you have that right product market fit before you go off and try to build what we would kind of consider like a sustainable traditional business based on after having found the right product market fit. I don't know if Trevor.
I mean, I almost agree with that, but
yeah. I'm
only giving my honest opinion here because Murat told me to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
I figured it'd be a nice academic exposure for everyone.
I mean, let's get into like running an experiment. So
okay. So I'm showing the Javelin slide.
Okay, so move forward to the hypothesis.
180 days, 18 months research.
So instead of wasting time filling out your canvas. If you're just starting, I mean, I know some of you have a more baked site. You just want to get out of the building as soon as you can. Like, you want to spend maybe 30 minutes documenting an experiment and then just going out and doing it. I mean, that's really kind of like every minute that you wait until doing that is really like a wasted amount of time.
Yeah, and Trevor, for your reference, like this today is like where they're learning about this. So for the next, here on out, for the next 9 weeks through the program, will be a bunch of getting out of the building and talking to customers.
Awesome.
So I have the
So,
hypothesis CPS slide up.
yep. So the three most important components of hypothesis are the customer, the problem, and the solution. And you want to pick two in the beginning, either the customer, the problem, or the problem and the solution. And an example of a hypothesis, so as entrepreneurs, the reason why we need a hypothesis is because a hypothesis is a specific statement that can be tested. Our ideas are usually so big as entrepreneurs that they can't be tested because they're too big and they're too vague because, we're like, we want to make the world a better place. And like, how do you really test that kind of a vision? Well, if you frame it in the sense that I believe this as narrowly specific as possible customer has a problem, this specific problem, you can test that, right? And you want to go as hone it as specific as you can because the more specific you get, the more easier it is to test it if it's true or not. And the truth will really set you free as an entrepreneur. Another version of hypothesis, I believe the solution will result in a specific outcome. So, when I started my first company and got the product, I got one sale on the first day, and then for the next few weeks, the next few months, I didn't get any sales. And so I'm wondering, is that good? Is that bad? Am I not good enough at sales? So when you set a specific solution outcome hypothesis in the beginning on day one, you allow yourself to make a very logical conclusion as to what's going to happen. And then you can realize that if you're wrong and that you don't meet that outcome, that some of those building blocks are actually wrong about what you thought about the world.
So an example of this would be like we're going to get this solution should result in this many sales per day or this many emails per day. Is that fair?
Exactly. Yeah, or we can get one sale in the first week.
Okay.
And, as a team, right, like there's always going to be some element of the fact that maybe your team's not good enough for a specific business. And that's just a reality you have to live with. And you really have to find a business that your team can be successful with. So that brings us to the idea of the assumptions. So an assumption is a belief that supports your hypothesis. So your hypothesis is a very specific statement, and your assumption is all the reasons why that hypothesis should be true. It's about your beliefs and your team's beliefs about the world. The riskiest assumption is that belief that is both core to viability and also unknown. So we're looking for an assumption that is really central to the hypothesis and is also something that you don't know a lot about, that it's really uncertain. If you're picking something that is not, core to the viability, that doesn't matter. And if you're picking something you know a lot about, then it's probably true. So that's why you want to pick something that's most likely going to be wrong, and is also very important to the business. The next concept is the method. The method is how you actually test it. And in the early stage, there's three methods, and there's actually really maybe four methods altogether. So there's interviewing, which is you just focus on the customer problem, you don't know the solution yet. And generally speaking, as an entrepreneur, you always start with the solution. Unfortunately, it's how we're programmed, but you want to try and separate yourself from the solution and just focus on the problem because it makes it much easier. Then you go into selling, which is actually we have a solution. We're not going to build the solution. We're going to just sell the idea of it to people, see if they will buy it before we even have it, right? So, if you guys ever watch the Home Shopping Network, I mean, I guess it's probably past all of our times, but they used to sell these products on TV, and you'd call a phone number to buy it. A lot of those products didn't exist, or they weren't being produced, and so they would wait till they got a certain number of sales to actually produce those products. That's exactly what you're doing as an entrepreneur. You're not going to build anything until you sell it. And then the third method is concierge. This is actually after you sell one to a Cookie Monster early adopter, you're going to actually deliver the product in a one-off way. So you're not going to go to China and find a factory and manufacture 1,000 of these things. You're going to build one from a 3D printer in your dorm, or you're going to build one from whatever materials you have, or you're gonna hack a WordPress site together to make it work. And then finally, after you've proven the concierge phase, you're going to go on to building a prototype. And these methods increase in specificity and also the amount of risk that you're taking. If you start at concierge, you're taking on a lot of risk. You're assuming that there's not a lot of risk in this business and that you're really sure of it. If you're going to the prototype, you're taking on a lot of risk because you're spending a lot of money just to get the thing to market. Whereas in interview, you can spend a couple hours, go out and talk to people and figure out if anybody really wants this thing. Finally, we have success criteria. So we talked about the hypothesis, the riskiest assumption, which is the reason why this hypothesis is most likely to be wrong. The method is how we're going to test it. And the success criteria is when we use the method, what is the result going to be? What is our prediction? As I mentioned, when you make a prediction ahead of time, you're more likely to be able to figure out a logical conclusion to why you were wrong. If you don't write a prediction, you're going to go out there and you're just going to think that whatever happened is what you expected. It's actually been proven in psychological studies to be called a concept called retrospective coherence. You can Google that. And so on the experiment board, we have decision and we have learning. Decision is whether you're going to pivot or persevere. If you meet your success criteria, you should persevere and take on more risk and invest more money in the product. If you don't meet your success criteria, you should really strongly consider why you're doing this, and you should think about pivoting to something else. And it's just really that simple. If you don't meet your success criteria, you should think about pivoting. If you do meet your success criteria, you should continue on. Finally, we have the learning. This is the most important lesson that leads to your decision about do we persevere or pivot. What did customers say? How many people bought? So on and so forth. And we have a free tool called the experiment board. You guys can definitely use it. You don't have to. It's a free tool online. We built it because we just found it really effective in doing this stuff. Murat, can you go to the scooter slide?
The campus bike slide?
Yeah, yep.
Yep.
So this is my baby, guys. This is the company that I started, I think about 6 years ago now. And I spent 3 months building this website, actually. Spent 3 months importing a product from China to the U.S. Spent $10,000. I built custom e-commerce software because my background's in web development, web design. Got a new digital camera for this, take this photo that you see. I spent literally lots of time over every minute aspect of this website. And on the first day, I only sold one scooter. And then in 6 months, I didn't sell any others. And it was a very frustrating failure because at the end of it all, I thought it was still a good idea, and I just was pissed off at myself and my partners for being so bad at business. It never dawned on me like, hey, maybe nobody wants this product. And so 2 years later, I became all the wiser, and I started to learn the Lean Startup method. And I said, well, hey, what would happen if I tried to take a Lean Startup approach to starting this business over again? And keep in mind, I actually thought it was still a good idea. So applying this process, we started with a customer, and my customer segment was people on Craigslist who are buying Vespas. Now think for a moment about how specific this customer segment is. Does anyone have any confusion about who people on Craigslist buying Vespas is? Rod, do you understand what I mean by people on Craigslist buying Vespas?
I'm pretty sure you mean people on Craigslist that are buying Vespas.
Do you know how to find people on Craigslist that are buying Vespas?
I think I'd go to Craigslist and search for Vespa.
Right. So I mean, it's not even really, I went to business school. I took marketing classes. It's not how you define a customer in marketing class. It's really just as specific a person as you can define that anyone in your team knows where to go to find those people. And we found that we thought these were the ideal people because they're in the process of buying a Vespa. And I thought that my scooters were better than Vespas because they were cheaper and they were better for the environment. They were electric powered. Vespas are gas powered. And so the problem I believe that we were solving was that people were relying on oil. And because mine were better for the environment, people care about the environment. Now, your first experiment, keep in mind, you don't define the solution. The reason we don't define the solution in the very early stage is because every customer has a problem and every problem has a solution. However, there are many, 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 many solutions that do not have a problem, right? And these are called businesses that fail. And there are many problems that don't have a customer, and these are also called businesses that fail. So when you focus on the customer, you can find a problem, and when you focus on the customer and the problem, you can find a solution. So the risky assumption really for us was that people cared about the environment, right? Because that was the whole thing. That I was importing these from people were importing these things I was importing these things from China. And so we set a success criteria as we're going to interview 20 people on Craigslist, and we wanted 5 of them to say that they did care about the environment as a reason for purchasing the scooter, right? Because then I could just say, well, don't you know there's like an electric scooter company called Campus Bike? And they would be like, oh my God, I really need that. So what we did was we put up a fake Craigslist ad, right? So I took a photo from another Craigslist ad. We put this on Craigslist, and I decreased the price a little bit. I got a Google Voice number, and I put this up. People started calling me every 20 minutes, and I'd have a conversation with them that would start off by asking them, what interested you in buying the scooter? Like, tell me a little bit about your story. And people would say all kinds of different things, like, I used to study abroad in Italy, and I really loved. I used to ride Vespas there, and it was really a lot of fun. I want to have that experience again. Someone would say, my wife has one, and she's always riding it, or my girlfriend has one, she's always riding it, and if I get one, we're going to be able to ride together, and it's going to be really great. And guess how many people mentioned the environment as a motivator for them? Murat, you want to guess? You've heard the story.
I haven't heard the story, but I see some people typing 0. Some people are saying 0.
Yeah, 0. So this is the funny part. One person went so far as to say, listen, all I want to do is wear a skinny tie and ride a Vespa. So, keep in mind, guys, this is a business I'm really passionate about. I'm really excited about. When I listened to these conversations, it really, really upset me. It shocked me. I got mad at people. I said, you don't care about the environment? And people would say, no, not really. And this really was a weird feeling. It kind of changed my reality. And it's something that I see every single time at LSM when people are really excited about their ideas. And it might happen to you someday, where you just don't know where you are. You're like, where am I? What's my name? How is this happening? And so just so you guys know, at the end of the call, I would tell people like, hey, I'm really sorry. You're probably gonna be upset, but I don't actually have a Vespa, and I'm trying to start a business selling electric scooters, but it sounds like no one is interested in them. And I thought people would be mad, but they're like, oh, like really? That's great. Like cool. Like my uncle started a business once. If I can help in any way, here's my email address. Like, just reach out to me. And I realized a fundamental truth, and that's that people are so bored every day that when something weird happens to them, they actually really enjoy it. So when you go and do your customer development and you're, approaching people on the street and bothering them, you'll be surprised. They're probably going to be, appreciative to talk to you. Now, keep in mind, there's always a fine line. You don't want to, had I said, meet me in Union Square, and then when they showed up, I said, oh, just kidding, there's no scooter, they'd probably be pretty pissed. But the fact that I only wasted 5 minutes or less is, probably not an issue. So 0 out of 20 were really interested in that idea, and I had to pivot. So I learned that people just wanted to wear skinny ties, and they were really interested in the lifestyle of owning a scooter. So while we were doing customer development, we noticed something interesting, and that is that people on the in New York City, we saw a lot of scooters parked on the far reaches of the island. So for those of you who've been to New York, Alphabet City and 11th and 12th Avenue, West Side Highway area, there's a lot of scooters parked outside buildings. We said that's kind of strange that there's no scooters anywhere else, and all of a sudden there's like 3 of them parked inside a building. We thought, well, it makes sense if you have a difficult commute to work that you would benefit more from a scooter than someone else because it save you time, save you money. And we said, well, what about other people who work in these areas or live in these areas that don't have a scooter? Why is that? And we hypothesized the problem was that they didn't see the benefit and safety of owning a scooter. So our customer segment is people with a difficult commute in New York, and we defined a difficult commute as living or working where it's difficult. You have to change multiple subway stops. It's not really easy to get to work. And then our solution this time, because it was our second experiment, was that we're going to give them a one-page trial of the scooter, or a one-pager explaining the scooter, and then opportunity to ride one to see how safe it is. And our risky assumption this time is a little bit different because we said, how could we prove this hypothesis wrong? How could we prove that people with a difficult commute didn't see the benefit and safety of owning a scooter? We said, well, if they have friends that really love riding a scooter and find it useful and safe, well then they must not need this, right? Because then that would invalidate the problem. So we decided to interview 10 people. We said 8 out of 10 who have a difficult commute and don't have a Vespa must also have no friends with Vespas. Right? That was the logic of this experiment. And so we got out of the building. We went up to people and we, asked them about themselves, where they work, where they live. And whenever someone would say, whenever someone fit our profile, we'd say, have you thought about owning a scooter? We'd just say, hey, I have a random question for you. Have you thought about owning a scooter? You can make up a reason like, I used to have one, or a friend of mine has one. It's really useful to get to work or something. And we would engage people in a conversation, see what they thought. And we noticed that the reaction we got from people was not really that great. People would get a little bit uncomfortable as we're talking to them. They'd kind of start to close off, and they'd look away from us and say, I don't know, I'm just not interested. I'm not a scooter person. We say, you're not a scooter person. What does that really mean? And we invalidated that experiment. We found that that were 5 people out of the 10 that had friends with scooters and difficult commute and didn't have one. And we realized something kind of interesting, and that is that in order to ride a scooter, you really have to be a hipster, right? So you have to live in Portland or Williamsburg in Brooklyn, New York, for that to fit into your persona. Right? When you buy a scooter, it's funny because whenever I do this talk in New York, some people will say I live in Williamsburg and I was looking at scooters yesterday, and that scooter becomes a part of your identity. So when you buy a scooter, then you're going to have a Facebook photo of you riding that thing, looking really cool, right? Everyone's going to know. Your parents are going to see that. You're going to go to work and you're going to have a helmet, with you by your desk, and your friends are going to say, "Oh, did you get a motorcycle?" And you're going to say, "No, I got a Vespa." Freaky to some people to be that guy or that girl, For other people, it's not an issue, but they already have scooters. So we kept thinking about that, right? So the learning itself that we got from that experiment didn't necessarily lead us directly to a product. We had to think further about the implications of that. And we started to think, well, a scooter is actually $3,000. If I don't know if it's going to fit me, even though it'd be really useful to me, if I don't know if I can put that on my Facebook, then that's kind of a big risk, right? What if I could just rent it and see, kind of see what my friends thought first, and I could kind of try it out. And if I didn't fit me, I could return it. Right? So we saw that the problem was not really that they just didn't fit people in general, but that it was too expensive for the identity risk. Right? That was kind of the implicit thing that we found when we were talking to customers. And So we came up with a solution that you could rent a Vespa before you buy it. And the risky assumption here, after thinking about it, to keep in mind, when you come up with a risky assumption, you're not just coming up with a risky assumption. You're coming up with like 20 assumptions among your team about that hypothesis, about the world. And then you're trying to whittle it down to one that is the biggest risk. You're trying to whittle it down into a reason why this hypothesis is going to fail. And we said, if people won't pay $250 a month, this won't work. So the success criteria was that we wanted to put a landing page up that said you had to pay $250. We wanted to get 15 email addresses in 2 hours. People clicking through that page that said you have to pay $250. So are you showing the scooter page, the landing page?
Yep, there it is.
Cool. So guys, look at this page. This page took us 2 hours. The last page I showed you, I spent 3 months building an e-commerce site. Right? This page is so much simpler. And I said, rent this Vespa for $250 a month. If you love it, buy at a discounted price. Click here to sign up. You can see the scooter cost, $4,500 at the base model. This is like, $3,000 model is like not that cool. This is like the bare minimum cool one. And we knew people wanted Vespa, right? Because they wanted that Italian lifestyle, smoking cigars and wearing leather jackets and flannel. Sorry.
No problem.
And we talked to some people who have scooters, and we got testimonials from them about why they should own a scooter, and those testimonials were exactly what the customer's been telling us. I never thought about owning a scooter before, but it cut my commute in half, and now I don't show up at work sweating from a bike ride. So that's exactly what people are telling us. I never thought about owning a scooter before, but it cut my commute in half, right? That was exactly what we were trying to sell. And so we blast this out through our Facebook accounts, through Twitter. I reached out to the people on Craigslist again and said, hey, what do you think of this? And the response we got was insane. We didn't just get 15 people to sign up in 2 hours like our goal. We got 50 people to sign up. And not only that, so this click here to sign up button, I don't imagine this, led to a coming soon form. So you just click through it and said, sorry, we don't really have it. It's coming soon. Sign up. We'll send you more information. We'd love to have you as a customer in the future. We had 50 people sign up, and there were a couple people who were typing like in all caps, like in the comments people would leave like, this is the greatest thing ever. And someone had like 5 exclamation marks at the end of like, I want this. And I went back to some of the people that we interviewed in the second experiment, saying who were like really getting closed off, and they're like, I'm not a scooter person. And I said, I know you're not a scooter person, but what if you could just try a scooter for a month? If it doesn't fit your lifestyle, then you could just return it, and you all you lost is $250. It will save you a lot of time in your commute. And this person like literally jumped out of his seat, and he was like, "This is I never thought that was possible." And he just immediately turned into a cookie monster. Like his eyes started getting really big, and he like started foaming at the mouth, saying that he really wanted to try this. And we had people tweeting at us too, like, this is a great idea. And on my Facebook wall, when I posted it, someone said, Trevor, you have really come up with a good idea here. So it was like a weird thing happened, and it was so obvious that people wanted this, right? It wasn't like the other 2 times where it was like, people are like, oh, it's interesting, right? If anyone says your idea is interesting, they're just being polite, and it's a generally accepted thing in the lean startup circles that someone says your product's interesting, that means that it sucks.
So, Trevor, what I think is really fascinating is that the exact same product, right? These
Yep.
scooters, the exact same product. But what do you think how would you describe the major difference between what you were doing with your previous effort that failed and this model that you found 50 people interested in all caps cookie monsters?
Yeah. So actually, it wasn't the same product. So this one is a Vespa, and my other ones are electric. But it was really that we were solving a different problem, and we figured out why people buy scooters in the first place. And so the problem that we were solving is the risk of taking that leap to buy a scooter in the first place, because vast majority of Americans, especially if anyone on the call is from Europe, they probably don't understand like what I'm talking about being a scooter person. But in America, it's kind of weird. It's not as bad as riding a Segway, but almost. Actually, no, I take that back. Scooters are pretty cool.
All right.
But just so everyone knows, I actually didn't continue with this business because I was just doing it to test the method. And what I really wanted to do was start to actually this is a really good segue because now I can start. Do you have any? Does anyone have any questions before I can start talking about like what I did next and kind of the rest of my story? Does anyone have any questions about the process or applying it to your own startup?
I have a question. So just a small one. Like, where did you get the original idea from making Vespas or like having Vespas? Like, how did you get to this core idea of Vespa in the first place? So you mentioned it was something about the environment, or?
Yeah. So at the time when I started the business originally, like, now that I'm in New York, I actually don't follow gas prices anymore. But at the time, I grew up in the Massachusetts area, and like at the time, gas prices were going up a lot. Like, I think it was like going from like it was like the first time it reached $4 or something like that. I don't know what gas prices are now, but it's like the first time it reached $4 a gallon, I think. And it was going up like maybe a dollar, $1.50, and like people were freaking out. Like people were going to the gas pump and like buying like 1,000 gallons. I was in China at the time, and I saw like everyone riding these things, and they were much more economical, like like 3 times more economical than a car. And it just kind of made sense to me, like we're in this environmental crisis, so people are really going to want a more environmentally friendly form of transportation.
Cool. So, I guess I'm just curious as to, would there have been a point that you would have abandoned the idea of Vespa to find something different if it had come to that, or like was Vespa kind of like the core of the idea that you wanted to stick with in the business? Like, would that be considered a pivot if you went away from the Vespa, or would that be considered a restart?
Yeah. So I mean, I define so a pivot is defined as a change in strategy without a change in vision, and vision you could define in a million different ways. But the way I define it is really like what you're passionate about, like what gets you excited. I see a lot of teams where they pivot based off of just like what they think, what customers are telling them, and it's like something that they're not really interested in doing. Which to some extent, is a little bit sad. Like to some extent, you should, if you find a really good idea, you should probably pursue it. But
Right.
on another level, you have to kind of be, honest with yourself about what makes you excited. And ironically, for me, the scooter rental business didn't make me excited at the time. I just kind of was doing it for the learning lesson. But I don't know. It's really vision is a subjective thing, and the difference is if you like raise venture capital, like VCs have a totally different definition of vision, and it's not even really clear. But in lean startup terms, and for practical reasons as entrepreneurs, your vision is what makes you passionate and your team passionate.
Cool. Thank you.
Trevor, question from UPenn Grant Me. So if you're reaching out to customers and you expect only a small number of them to be receptive to an idea, maybe every one customer is huge for your business, how do you decide when to pivot?
So does that mean it's an enterprise company or B2B or something?
They are working with grant providing agencies to be a platform for grants and making applications easier for professors to apply for grants. So it's kind of niche in a sense.
Okay. So so let me explain it this way. So what you're looking for in the earliest stages is just one Cookie Monster, right? You're looking to build like an addictive drug for one person, or an addictive drug for a small group of people is much more powerful and much more likely to become a larger business than something that is like a candy for, a large group of people. It's going to give you much more clarity as to what to do. It's going to help you make revenue early as a starving company. There's just so many reasons why you really want to go for an addictive drug for a small group of people as opposed to a candy for a large group of people, because a candy may not really be clear if it's sustainable. And it's, yeah. And so, Murat, did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. How do you think market size kind of fits into this, where if the
Yeah,
problem you're trying to solve is too small?
I think top-down market sizing is a lie. And I think like really the way things happen is because I think that really like you have to start bottom up, and like if you can't make it into a big market, then you know then you just got to sell the company for a few $1,000,000, and like that's not really a bad outcome. But it's much better to sell your company for a few $1,000,000 or tens of millions of dollars as opposed to selling it for nothing, which is the vast majority of entrepreneurs. And you know, you can, when you think about market sizing, like you can definitely try to be on the more, you know, leading edge of where kind of the obvious things are going. But the trouble is it's going to be much more competitive, right? I mean, think about, you know, the WhatsApp acquisition that just happened, right? The reason why they're so valuable to Facebook supposedly is because they were like this leading edge mobile, and mobile is the future, and lots of people think mobile is the future. The flip side is that there's hundreds of other mobile messaging apps that are going out of business right now. So I don't really think about top-down market sizing as thinking like, oh, there's like, you know, I don't know, 100 million moms in the United States, and if we just get 1% of that market, we're going to be, you know, this big. I really think of it as a bottom-up way, as like, if you can make one specific type of person passionate and you can measure the behavior, you can extrapolate that much easier to a more similar segment. And so if you can't, you know, you want to go from early adopters to the mass market, you can't just start the mass market, right? You have to start the early adopters and go to the mass market. And sometimes companies don't cross, you know, what they call cross the chasm. Mm-hmm. Sometimes companies get stuck in the early adopters, and then you just sell your company for $1 million, and you know, you're pretty well off, as opposed to a company that tries to go top down, target the mass market, and then a few years later, you know, it goes out of business or something.
So a question from Hashtagger, which is a search engine for hashtags across multiple platforms. We believe that people would like/use our hashtag search engine. How would you go about getting press, blogs, newspaper, magazine?
Okay, a little bit divergent from what we're talking about, but I'm happy to talk about that. Getting press. So
well, maybe we can skip that and go back to the first part where they say we believe that people would like/use our hashtag search engine. What are your thoughts on that comment?
Well, it's not a hypothesis. It can't be tested. But I'm happy to answer press questions. I mean, generally speaking, you need to know writers. You need to email writers very short, like one-line emails that are pitching them on an idea. You have to have a good website. You have to hustle them. Getting press is really hard. It's like it's very much like dating or like finding investors. Like you have to kind of like make yourself vulnerable and pitch someone to get them excited about an idea. You have to email lots of people. Oh, you definitely want to find people who've written about something similar before. If someone's written about something similar before, you want to, you know, writers generally cover a beat. They have a general kind of expertise around a certain area they're interested in. You can find that. It's all transparent. So you want to find people that have written about something in your space. You want to keep a spreadsheet of all those people, and you want to keep adding to it. You know, every time someone writes a lean startup, I add them to a spreadsheet. And then whenever I have something to announce, I reach out to all those people and say, hey, great article on X. By the way, we do this, and we have a huge announcement. I'd love to either I'd love to talk to you about it. Yeah, just I'd love to talk to you about it. Do you have 5 minutes to get on a phone call?
Great. I see some more people typing. Agree that it's super hard. Alternative approaches to do a guest post based on what you're an expert at or what you know. For example, something along the lines of being a student entrepreneur. Guest posting.
Yeah, press can be really hit or miss. I mean, To be honest, Press has been of almost no value to my company, with one exception. What I use Press for is not to acquire customers. I use Press to send my existing customers an email that says we got Press, because that gets them really excited, and they think something's important, and they see kind of the credibility behind it. I've never gotten any customers from Press, to be honest. It's really about strengthening your existing user base.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We have some more people typing.
We're waiting for them to finish typing. Are you suggesting? Do you say that if there are no early adopters, that you should abandon ship? Like, there should really be no product that doesn't have an early adopter to it?
Which team are you with?
Hack and Hide.
Hey.
Yes, I am. And I think if you can't find people that are really excited about your product before you build it, then it's really nothing's going to change. I mean, when you build a product, people still aren't going to be excited about it. I don't know if there's I'm always open-minded to like consider something I haven't thought of, but I really haven't seen a single case where before building the product, you couldn't find users that like were really dying for it. That after you build it, that hasn't been the same case. No matter how beautiful the design is, no matter how much money you spend, people are not going to change much because their imagination is much more powerful than your product, than any product you can ever build.
Trevor, we have a few game companies here, and
great.
I definitely personally I struggle with applying product market fit philosophies to games. Do you have any guidance on that point?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we're doing a workshop with Rovio, the guys who created Angry Birds, and I definitely think that Lean applies a lot to gaming. And so the way that Angry Birds was developed, actually, this is a little bit different approach than I've talked about in my case study. But one of the good ways to do customer development is to kind of copy something that's already working and just improve upon it. And so at the time of Angry Birds, there were a lot of these physics engine games on the iPhone, right? And what Angry Birds is, they came up with this really cool like Angry Birds concept. And this game studio had actually made 20 other games before they made Angry Birds, where they developed a really good competency for making good quality games, and they had really the skills to make them. But none of their games were that successful. They'd only made hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue. I think Angry Birds is like, let me just look this up right now, but my gut is like that it's like hundreds of millions of dollars or even $1 billion or something like that. But think about it. Think about how many different versions of Angry Birds there have been, right? There's not just one. There's not just one Angry Birds. I'm at the Wikipedia page right now. There's Bad Piggy's Egg Recipes, Angry Birds The Big Green Doodle Book, Angry Birds Big Red Doodle Book #2, Angry Birds Space, Angry Birds National Geographic, Angry Birds Space. There's like all these different Angry Birds games. Angry Birds Rio, Angry Birds Star Wars, Angry Birds Friends, Angry Birds Stella. So they've sold over 12 million copies of the game from Apple's App Store. So I guess.
So they have a product market fit that's working, and they're kind of duplicating that over and over. So is that what you're saying there?
Well, so there's one thing. So like they looked at things that were already successful and kind of improved upon them, and they thought that like really what made Angry Birds was not the game itself, but really kind of some of the branding around it, some of the simplification and skill that they added to it. And then they had to really Angry Birds is not just one version of the game; it's all of the games and editions that they've created. And so when you create a game, can you get people super amped just by the first level of the game, right? It's no different from in Hollywood where they make a pilot of a show, and then they see if anyone's interested in that and excited by that pilot. And before you commit to building a whole season or a whole a whole game out of it, how can you test the minimum amount of functionality for that game? If you're trying to build Street Fighter, can you just build Ryu and Blanca and see if people are excited by playing just those two characters before you build all the other characters?
Right. And I would imagine that with games, like learning curve can be a big detractor from, having to figure out how to use the controls and whatnot.
Yeah, and you have to understand your customers still. So you have to understand, why do people play games on the iPhone? Where do they play games on the iPhone? How long do they play games on the iPhone? Right? Most people, I usually play iPhone games on the subway because I can't do email. Or I play them like before bed or something. So if you have that context of who your customer is and why they're playing the games, it's really helpful. In addition, Zynga is like the epitome of lean startup, right? They kind of made popular this idea of ghetto testing. Ghetto testing is the idea of build the crappiest version of a game that you can, or in addition to a game, to see if the metrics make sense to improve upon.
Or in Zynga's case, have some other company build a crappy version and then build a nicer version of it.
Yeah.
All right, we have some more questions. So from Tinderbox Studios, we are in the prototype stage and are looking at testing initial reactions and intuitive features with our alpha testers tomorrow/Saturday. When you are interviewing with a visual, what are the best ways / questions that will use to step back and let them take over with their emotions or thoughts? That will help us to step back and let them take over with their emotions or thoughts. So you have a prototype, you have a wireframe, for example. How do you use that when interacting with customers to get insight?
Okay, cool. So let me just add that I just looked it up. So Rovio made 150 million euros in 2012. So 150 million euros, majority of them from Angry Birds. So wireframes really should come after you do concierge, which is you're delivering the solution without technology, or through a Wizard of Oz, which is like you have a website, but the back end is really you doing the process manually. The reason is because we've worked with companies where they go and do wireframes. I've had companies where they had customers pay them $1,000, like 2 customers pay them $1,000, being like, this is amazing and I need this right away. And they went and did the wireframes, they went back to the customers and they said, this is interesting, which means this sucks. Or they realized that I don't get it. And they're like, well, what the hell? You just paid me $1,000 and I just wireframed exactly what you wanted. And they went back and did concierge, and they realized that the problem that people said that they had was actually not the problem that they needed to solve for people. So generally speaking, the problem that people buy a product on is not the problem that the product actually solves. It's kind of like explicit needs versus implied needs. So when it comes to doing usability testing, assuming that like you've done concierge, which is like you've done it by hand and manually as a service. My business, we did concierge for like 3 years with these workshops, and now we're finally building software to kind of automate it. So I know exactly what to build. I think, I don't know. Like my personal opinion, I guess, would be that if you haven't done concierge and you need to like question the wireframes, it's like you haven't done concierge enough.
Mm-hmm. So actually delivering the product through the Wizard of Oz or concierge.
Yeah.
And it may vary by teams. This team that's asking the question has a fairly unique thing, but
what is it? What is the product?
So it's basically Git for stories and animations. So you write a story and other people will put the animation on top of it, and then you can fork off of those stories and off of those animations and create multiple different stories. And whoever has the best story, kind of, they get upvoted in a sense, and those people get recognition. So it's like Git for storytelling.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, a concierge of this could be like a WordPress log that's really crappy, or a Google mail group where there's certain rules as to how to post, or it's a forum. Like I've seen this kind of thing, I think, in forums, but you need to figure out a way to do it in a really crappy way and kind of put your entrepreneurial passion aside. It's really hard, and you probably won't even do it, and I bet you won't let's take my advice because it's really hard to do this. But it's going to tell you exactly what to build, and you won't even need to ask the question, how do I know if my wireframe is right? Because you'll have been doing it for months, and you'll know every use case, every example of what your customer wants. And in fact, one of my favorite entrepreneurs, Manuel Rosso, who invented the concierge technique, said he scaled his product to hundreds of thousands of users by doing concierge and only coding when the crappy product had something where he didn't have enough people on his team to service the number of customers using the crappy product. He was totally fine using the crappy product. And he actually, by the way, he worked directly with Eric Ries at MVO as VP of Marketing. And he would use a crappy product. He would use email and clipboards in the very first version of the product and service one customer, made that customer happy, service two customers, made that customer happy, service three customers, made that customer happy. And he would scale from customers one at a time to hundreds of thousands of customers. And he actually recently sold his company for a lot of money doing this. And so it was intuitively obvious what he needed to build because they didn't have enough people on their team to do the work that they needed to do to keep their customers happy because there's too many of them at that point.
And in particular, we have a few teams, and this Tinderbox team is one of those that doesn't necessarily have direct technical members, so they're having to leverage other colleagues and whatnot through their school to do the technology side. So, in particular, if you don't have, if throwing together a website isn't the easiest thing for you, there's definitely a room for testing things out through the concierge method.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, one of the reasons why I didn't build any really tech until is because I didn't have a tech person. I actually got $1 million in sales without any technology. I built a crappy WordPress site in a weekend that we used to get $1 million in sales, and to scale to a lot of cities. And we probably scaled too much, actually. But the tech person I got is one of the best technologists in the world. He actually was one of the authors of one of the first books on Ruby on Rails, and everybody knows him. And when we raised funding this past summer, it was a lot easier because I had him on my team because investors already knew who he was, and he's much older than me. And building all of our products have been incredibly easy for me because he's just so good. And I couldn't imagine what I would do if I had anyone else doing the tech side of things.
So another question. We have a game that's around 2 months away from completion, but we're looking at ways to generate interest before release. Do you think it's a good idea to release a demo version in advance as a way to generate buzz, knowing that it might be very incomplete? It passed 1 billion a couple years ago, by the way. Oh, Angry Birds. Oh, I see. So, yeah. So do you release a demo of your version of your product if it's going to be incomplete?
I mean, normally my initial thought was absolutely, but I don't know enough about the company and what kind of constraints and pressures you're under, so it's really like a team call and whether you have enough time to really do that. But I mean, I think if
tough. You don't want to have bad PR around a crappy product, right?
Yeah, but I think about two ways as well. If you release this product in 2 months and no one uses it, you will probably have no doubt that you are building the wrong thing, right? If you release a demo in 2 months and nobody uses it, you'll probably spend another 2 months building the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you are going to release a demo as a sort of experiment, you should establish what your criteria are for success for that.
Well, I think the benefit of a demo, I'm assuming that your product's going to be fantastic and that it's going to make you millions of dollars, is what I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a little bit late to launch a demo as a test if you're 2 months out. unless you could launch it in like a week or a couple weeks. But for pure marketing purposes, I mean, you could build a little bit of a demo. So test the demo with like 5 or 10 customers. See if people really like the demo, and then if you can launch it quickly and it gets people excited, then I would definitely do it. But it might be better use of your time to really focus all of your efforts on the launch of the product.
Yeah.
Is it an iPhone game, or what kind of game is it?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Mobile games, Unity based.
Is that Android or?
Unity is like a cross-platform.
So is 2 months you're putting in the App Store? Like, I think these are important details. So if you're putting in the App Store, like, you need to really try to get featured. Friends of mine, that have gotten 100,000 downloads in their apps is because months before they had like kind of socialized the product with people at Apple. So
through their networks.
Yeah, I mean, like, get on a plane, go to Cupertino, have a really good plan for the App Store, because even if you have an awesome product and you can't get it in the App Store and featured, it might be difficult, right? And like, there's always that borderline case where like you have a good product but you don't have an amazing product. You should always try to have just the amazing product that people are dying for. But yeah, you got to do the best you can, and if you don't get in the App Store, you might blame that as a reason for your failure.
Interesting. Any other questions for Trevor for now?
Cool. Do you want me to talk a little bit about kind of what we did after?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is that in your slides? I'm looking at the what takes you 6 months took me 3 days. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, I think I'm going backwards.
Yeah, I don't have anything else in the slides.
You don't? Oh, okay, I see. Oh, okay, perfect. Let me. Yeah, so you talked about your story and lean, and I want to open it back up to folks about really, if you have questions about what over the next few days, as you guys are going out and testing your hypotheses, you're going to be talking to customers and potential customers, and really trying to listen to get a better understanding of what their problem is. And for those of you that are further along in the process, where you have a prototype and whatnot, I would encourage you to try to put that to the side and really try to get a better understanding of what are the top problems that these customers have. So Trevor, with these teams that maybe you see this a lot, is there a way that if you already have a solution or you already have something, what does that experience look like to try to find a customer segment or try to find the problem that fits that solution?
Yeah. So if you haven't been doing lean startup and you have a solution, it's like really hard. It's like the hardest thing for an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it. Dozens of times, and every time I see the same thing, which is that you're going to be mentally stuck. The psychology of your sunken cost and investment in that solution is going to prevent you from doing something. And we call this actually a solution in search of a problem. And a solution in search of a problem is like pretty easy to identify, I think. But it's a really bad situation to be in, and it's probably gonna you'll probably be trying to find a problem for the rest of this program if that's the case. I know that when we see it at our workshops. So at our workshops, it's 3 days. People will do 5 experiments. Some people will do 10 experiments. They'll pivot multiple times, and the idea they come in with is nowhere near the product that they come out with, and the product they come out with always has. We've had people that one person, Mark Abramson, pivoted 5 times. On his 5th pivot, that product he came out with made $5,000 in revenue in an hour and a half. Everything else, people just said, this is interesting. And then he came up with this second idea. After all of his learnings across all of those, he would call someone on the phone and he would say, this is my idea. Can I get your credit card number to charge you $1,500? And people would say, that sounds awesome. Sign me up. And he would write down their credit card number, and he didn't even have a business yet. Right?
Yeah.
He didn't charge them, but he just wrote down their information and followed up with him later when he actually had started the concierge phase.
So for those that do have a product, if they really believe in the product, let's say that they haven't been the most rigorous of lean startup practitioners, but they have some experience in that market, and they have a product that they think should be successful. If they have a prototype, or a working website, what is the next step for them before they spend the next 6 months or next 12 months really buying into this? What should they do in the next few weeks with this prototype?
Yeah. So I didn't finish my story because, like, when people come in with an idea and they haven't been working on it, they don't have a solution, they're able to run 10 experiments, pivot 5 times, and get lots of money. When people come in with a product they've been working on for like 3 months, some of them will only run 1 experiment the entire time, and their idea looks exactly the same as when it came in, and they're kind of like left wondering, what the hell happened. And some people will maybe run 1 experiment and they'll invalidate it, and like on the second day, they have that like zombie feeling where like one girl described it as being like Britney Spears in rehab with her head shaved, where like she didn't know who she was because she ran 2 experiments and no one wanted her product that she'd been working on for 6 months. And like then the next day she got through it, and like I don't think she came up with something good, but like she realized it, and that was like really empowering. But really the core thing of being an entrepreneur, right? This is not like the only answer. Right? It's a very like you have like your brain and your knowledge, and that essence of what's in your mind has created this idea for this company, and you have to figure out like what is the foundation of your thinking, and you have to come up with a way that you can allow this thing to fail. You have to come up with a logical conclusion to if something doesn't happen, or if like you have to make a prediction that if it's not true, that you're willing to call it quits. That is the ultimate calling of an entrepreneur, is to be able to fail, and to fail quickly by putting your baby on the chopping block, by cornering yourself to what you think should happen, and if it doesn't happen, then you're not going to continue with the project. And it's not about something that's going to happen that is really easy and is obviously going to happen, like 1 person signing up for your site. It's like, what do you like in your hearts of hearts? What do you think is going to happen? And if you miss that by how much percentage would you give up, right? So if you're not gonna give up, even if you have no revenue, like then you're way too stubborn, right? You have a lot of opportunity cost. You could be doing anything you want with your time, right? Especially the people in this program. You guys are so young, and you have the entire future ahead of you. You don't want to be, while you still have passion, energy, you want to be able to pivot. So it's all about deciding as a team, what is our hypothesis? What is the risky assumption? Why is this going to fail? How do we test that? And then what is the success criteria? And really, you're going to feel afraid. You're going to feel very afraid when you do that if you're passionate about the idea. Because when an experiment fails that's designed properly, it feels like getting punched in the face. Like when people didn't say they care about the environment, it felt like I got punched in the face.
But you want your experiments to fail in some sense, right?
Well, you don't want them to you don't want them to fail because you want to build that company, but you need to create a situation where you can disprove it, right? And if you don't do that, then you're going to be a zombie company. You might get lucky and win the lottery, but if you're able to do that, you're going to systematically be successful in life and as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right? You should think about your life as an entrepreneur as starting many companies. This isn't the last company you're going to start.
So let's say they have a working website or a prototype or a product. They're ready to launch some point. What would be an example of a hypothesis and assumptions and an experiment that they would run in order to determine whether they should spend the next 6 months working on this company?
Yep. So I'll give you an example. So when we launched the validation board, which is like the product that we were doing a long time ago, my success criteria was to get 20,000 people to download it. And your pivot doesn't have to be so dramatic. Like I'm adding a lot of drama here to kind of like break through to you guys because I know that you're new to this stuff. But for us, we want to get 20,000 downloads, and we didn't. We got like 10,000. And for me, my pivot was not targeting entrepreneurs anymore for the validation board. It was targeting enterprise. So I knew that there just weren't enough startups out there for us to really make a viable business because they didn't meet success criteria. So kind of kept the same idea going.
And how'd you come up with that 20,000 number?
It was just what I believed. I said, if I'm really going to target startups, I need to be able to get 20,000 downloads. And I gave myself a month to like get press and to like do marketing and send it to our list. And I gave myself 2 weeks, but I gave ourselves a month for that 20,000 to come in.
Mm-hmm.
And by now, like a year later, we've gotten over 20,000. But I want to get really like a lot of traction the first month and see it catch on.
So there's a lot of, the lean process in general, there's a lot of like heavy loading on the front end of everything you do. It's kind of like doing as much as you can today in order to test out whether you should continue to be doing this next week.
Yeah, the traditional way of starting a new business is doing all the planning up front, building the product, and then finally going to market and talking to customers and marketing it. Mm-hmm. And that approach is going to screw you over if no one wants the product at the end of that, right? The biggest risk, as we mentioned at the beginning of this, is that anyone's going to want it. And not only that anyone's going to want it, really, it's that enough people are going to want it to make it a business that meets your expectations, right? So all of this is based into what are your expectations as an entrepreneur? What do you aspire to do? And can you meet that by your current plans, right? And can you make enough profit to support yourself, to support a team? So.
Yeah. So I have another question here that I think will be a nice segue into the maybe a little bit of the business model canvas conversation, or more importantly, rather than bashing the business model canvas, talking more about the experiment board, which is free for folks to use. The question is, what are the biggest criticisms of lean methodology from people throughout the industry?
Yeah. I'll give you, there's a lot of criticisms that are rooted in like misunderstanding, and I can talk about those, and I can talk about maybe some of the criticisms I think myself. So I think people think like lean means you have to be cheap, right? And that's not true. You could raise $100 million. Lean is really about expending the minimum amount of effort that you need to validate the approach you're taking. So if you need to raise $100 million to build something really technically advanced to test the assumptions, or if you've tested all the assumptions already and then you need to raise $100 million to build it out, that's fine. That's totally in line with lean startup. Another thing is that it favors like data over vision, and to some extent, like anyone in Silicon Valley who's older than Eric Ries and more successful than him probably doesn't believe in lean, because like if you were more older and more successful than Eric Ries, like why would you believe in all the success of his book? And if you didn't do it that way, a lot of people won the lottery, right? I've seen a lot of people who try to just ignore what customers say, and it never ends up well. And I've had enough experience now to see that. And I've seen people who spend a couple $100 and can prove something won't work, and I've seen other companies raise millions of dollars and fail 2 years later. And one of our mentors at LSM, someone asked well, what if I want to do Instagram? I don't want to charge customers for anything. Well, you don't have to charge customers for everything. You should prove that whatever you're building is valuable to them. You can do that through engagement metrics. You can do it in a lot of different ways. It's really context specific. But there's a lot of competitors to WhatsApp that are going out of business. There's a lot of competitors to Instagram that went out of business. When you find an unmet need and you solve it, and maybe it's not something that TechCrunch covers, maybe it's something that is not the hottest trend in Silicon Valley, you're gonna be successful, and you're gonna have created something of value for people, and you're gonna do all right financially.
One of the questions I have about lean is, in these cases where you're interviewing customers, and Justin Wilcox, whom some of the students have viewed some of his videos, he talks about really understanding what are the top problems for a particular customer, right? And if your solution doesn't fit one of those problems, then you should quit working on your solution, and instead you should choose one of their top 3 or 5 problems to work on. Is that something you believe in? Does it have to be does the solution have to address one of the top 3 or 5 problems of a customer, or can it be something that isn't as quite a high priority, and what's the effect of that?
I think approach, first of all, I think that's a fantastic suggestion. I would caveat that with it's much harder to take your solution and find the right customer if you've already built it out. I think you don't have to do it that way.
What if you don't have, let's say you don't have a solution, but you believe in a problem. Let's say you have that problem. Is it a matter of, should you only be working on problems that are in the top categories for these target customers, or is it okay if it's, say, number 20 on their list of things that they worry about?
It's definitely not okay if it's number 20 on their list of things. It's really context specific. I haven't really thought about that. I probably come up with a better answer, but you need to be able to know that you can build a business, right? And so, people might pay for something a lot that's not one of their top, let's say, problems in their lives, but it's still a problem for them. You know what I mean? And a problem, people make the mistake of interpreting a problem as something very literal, which means that ouch, I have a cut on my hand, and that's a problem. Or but a problem in essence is kind of a motivation or a need for someone to do something, or a predictable reason that someone's going to act in a certain way is really what I think of as a problem. So you don't want to really interpret a problem too literally like that. Your product should be an addictive drug, right? So a lot of addictive drugs really don't solve problems other than fundamental emotional and human needs, right? And so there has to be a strong motivating drive for your product. And I think Justin's suggestion is really great. I think if you talk to people and they say oh, that's not really a problem. Another question is if someone says a problem and you ask them, you never want to tell someone your solution in the beginning of an interview. Never do that. Let me just cover the basics of interviews. So
great.
Don't ask leading questions. That's rule number 1. That's the only rule. Don't ask leading questions. Leading questions are questions where you are getting them to answer in a predictable way. Every question you ask, they should have the freedom to answer it in an unpredictable way. And they should be and so yes or no questions are very often leading. Something where like something that's not even related to your product. Like some people ask, like, would you love to save time and money? Is a leading question. It tells you nothing about your product. And you have to be able to ask you have to be able to get honest feedback from people, and by not asking leading questions and asking things that are open-ended, asking for people really about stories about past behavior. So future behavior is a leading question. Like you can imagine I'm building an app around people's health and going to the gym. If it's around the new year and I say, hey, how many times would you like to go to the gym? People are going to say, oh, I want to go to the gym all the time. You say, okay, great. How many times did you go to the gym in the last month? People are going to say, oh, I didn't have enough time to go. Right? And so past behavior is the most prominent indicator of future behavior. Future behavior, if you ask people what they're going to do in the future, they're optimistic. They're going to give you things that are the wrong answer. If you ask them what they're going to do in the future, that's what they're not going to do in the future, for the most part.
So, I'm just thinking of all my New Year's resolutions. What about changing behavior? I often see, and I think a couple of the teams here, they're interested in changing the world, and in order to do that, I think that some of them need their customers or the general population to kind of change the way that they act.
Yep, that's great. So there's a couple ways to think about it. One is that, like, I've had people come to our workshop and be like, I want to solve recycling. People don't recycle enough. And, like, that's not really a problem that a customer has, is, like, not recycling. Every problem must be rooted in something a customer has. So you have to go deeper than that to understand, if you want to solve recycling, what's preventing people from recycling? First of all, who are people that want to recycle that don't? And why do the people that want to recycle, why don't they recycle? You're not going to get people who don't want to recycle and really don't care to recycle. You're going to get people who they already want to do it. You're going to help them to do it, easier and faster and better.
So maybe removing some barrier rather than changing their behavior or their personality, you're removing some barrier to that.
Exactly. You can't change their motivation. And actually, if you look at BJ Fogg and my friend Nir Ayal, who they're two of the foremost experts on behavior change in the world, and they work with companies like Evernote and Pinterest and stuff like that on like designing products that affect behavior. The way they do this is by making the behavior easier to do, not by affecting motivation. So there's an X and Y axis of motivation and ability. And it's much harder to change people's motivation. It's much easier to change their ability. So making an interface easier to use, making something simpler to do, removing barriers to it.
That's interesting. So we have about 19 minutes left with Trevor. If you guys have never been to a Lean Startup Machine, you're getting thanked for some awesome advice, by the way, Trevor, from Tinderbox. If you haven't been to a Lean Startup Machine, you can go to leanstartupmachine.com and you can help unlock one in your city. They're a lot of fun. They're very productive. You learn a lot. And it's very different. You can read all the blogs and websites and listen to all the lectures from gurus such as Trevor as you want, but the difference of actually being in the workshop and actually doing it, getting out of the building, talking to customers, it's one of those things that is truly experiential. So, and we hope that here, part of your assignment for next week will be to go out and have a number of interviews. We're shifting next week's class from Tuesday to Monday. So that gives you, 3 or 4 days to actually go out and have these interviews. And I encourage you, even if you already have a product, take take a few days here, take a step back, find that target customer segment, and have those open-ended conversations that Trevor is talking about before you pitch your solution. Don't even bring your solution. Don't bring a slide. Don't bring anything. Just have those open-ended conversations and really get to the understanding of specifically with whatever your hypothesis is that you're testing about their problem. So that being said, tomorrow we'll be sending out kind of a summary of what we hope you'll be able to accomplish over the weekend. We now have 17 minutes left, so I encourage you, anyone have any final questions for Trevor? If you want to ask a very explicit question, take a minute to describe your startup and ask him a very specific question. Now would be a great chance. So feel free to unmute yourself if you want to just ask Trevor a question. I'll give you guys a minute to A, build up some courage, and B, come up with a question. I have the pleasure of getting to talk to Trevor every week, so. So we have people typing, saying he great advice, really appreciate it, learned a lot. Someone's on the call, ready?
Hi, I actually have a question.
Go for it.
Yeah, this is actually more relevant, I guess, to your scooter business. But was there any burden of out if people were okay riding scooters? Do they have to acquire a license or anything like that?
Yeah. No, there's a lot of risks that are not market risk, like operational and stuff. Would someone break the scooter? We'd have to get physical locations. There's a lot of heavy lifting around that business. But to some extent, if people don't want it, none of that stuff matters. So that would be the next step in the road of building the company. And those things are all important, but they're all less important than whether or not it was really an addictive drug or my customers. And when you have people, shoving money in your face and signing up for your site on a constant basis, all this stuff becomes easier to do. So there's definitely a lot of issues, and it takes a long time to build the business. For me, I knew in April of 2011 that Lean Startup Machine, the workshop, was an addictive drug, and it's only today in February of 2014 where we're really scaling it and making it a very extremely profitable business.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Hey, Trevor. Hello? Can everyone hear me?
Hey.
Oh, hey. Okay, this is Team UPenn here. We just had a question. So Marat briefly introduced our idea, which was essentially we're doing a common application for grant funding. And we were wondering so when we're onboarding professors and researchers, how do we go about so we've talked with a few, there are some concerns about security, for example, of the website in general. How would you go about kind of gaining that type of trust when you're talking to customers?
So around security, they're worried that someone will steal their application, or
or potentially, we're 3 students, so partly the application or partly personal information getting lost, and then some of the professors are from an older crowd, I would say, and they're used to more traditional mail applications for grants, that type of thing.
Do you have SSL on your site? Do people go through sort of a bank level security when they submit it?
So as of now, not yet, because we're still in the process of kind of setting up the site, but that would be potentially something that we want to do.
So SSL is really easy to set up. It's super simple, and it's used in all payment gateways, and you could use that as a thing. otherwise, like, have you guys? So is the value prop that you give them sources of places to apply for grants, and then they do it through your system in a very easy way?
Yeah, that's essentially like the overall. We're kind of like both aggregating grants and making the process easier in general. So the big value proposition is accessibility and just facilitating the process and making it more efficient in general.
So how much revenue do you have today?
So we're still in the process of actually setting up our website. So no revenue yet.
Sure. So I mean, what I would recommend is just selling the is the information of the grants itself valuable, or is it really only the technology of filling out the form once and then sending it to like 10 people?
So there's value from both, from what we think right now. So there are already a few websites that aggregate grants, and they charge like a registration fee on the professor side.
Yep.
And then in addition to that, we think it would be a huge value add as well, having like a much easier process.
Yep. So the lean way to do it would be for you guys to become one of those companies that you just described first, where
Right.
you, for a small group of customers, you're charging them as much as you can just to provide information, and you're almost like the grant writing concierge, where you're a service for them to help them with their grant writing. And by doing that, you're going to build trust, you're going to have testimonials, you're going to have revenue, and you're going to know exactly what to build, and you could funnel that revenue into getting SSS. And so that's what I would do.
I see. So start off more as an aggregator. Is that what you're saying?
Do whatever you need to do to make one professor extremely excited to use your software and pay you as much as they can.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the question is, can you do that without building, with building as little as possible?
Yeah,
Right.
have them mail the application to you. I don't know, do it by mail. I mean, that's what they're used to. And be very hands-on, because when you're hands-on, you're going to learn so much about doing the business, and the learning is priceless. Actually, code is really like a liability. You may view code as like being able to help you, but code costs a lot of money to maintain. It costs a lot of money to write. And so it's a liability, whereas you can start to make some revenue in learning, which is priceless, now.
Because code really automates a process for you. That's the core purpose of software, is to automate a process. And if you haven't validated that the process itself is valuable, then you're just automating something that may or may not be valuable.
Yeah, and even if you're confident, it's just good hygiene. You know what I'm saying? You may not care if your teeth rot, but I don't know. Sorry, that metaphor didn't work.
No, we get what you're saying though. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. I got about 9 more minutes. Anyone have another question for Trevor? Or rather, who has the next question for Trevor?
Hello?
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry about the press question. That's what we're trying to work on as of right now, as in the early stages. But
no problem.
Yeah. Yep. So, how do you get people? How would you get people to drive people to the landing page? As of right now, are you thinking about using some of our funding for Facebook ads, Google ads, and Bing ads targeted towards digital marketers, which is our target consumer or customers? So, again, how do you drive people to a landing page?
I love this question. One of the reasons because we're building software to do that. we have a tool called Quick MVP, which is quickmvp.com, and it's like a free landing page tool, so it's free just like the experiment board. In the future we plan to have like a pro plan, but there's like a lot of different methods. So you said, can you tell me the customer again?
So basically we have a hashtag search engine where you can track basically hashtag campaigns. If you see like commercials, they see a hashtag, and we're trying to like target the digital marketers, the people like the brand managers of a company or the social media aspect of it.
Oh my God, such an easy person to target. So I would just find the Twitter handle of every big brand, and I'd tweet at them, say, hey, we have a great product for you. And make sure and then, because these people are they're on Twitter every day. Their job is to respond to people on Twitter, and you have a product for them. So you can just tweet at them and say, hey, what do you think of our app? Like, will you give us money for it?
So yeah, we've been trying that. So yeah, thanks.
Another approach, like a good, I forget who someone asked a question earlier that I was going to suggest, like classes and kind of like events are a great way to do customer development because you can get all your customers in the same room. It's very different from a focus group. Like you definitely don't want to do a focus group because those don't work, but you want to build a relationship with the type of people that you want to serve as customers, and then you can have a more personal relationship and get honest feedback from them. Not asking leading questions, but just keeping in touch with them, emailing them ideas and questions. And part of success in lean startup is how fast you can access customers. It is one of the most critical functions in a company is how fast you can access customers. And so by hosting a social media event, maybe you should host a class on how to use hashtag searching to improve your social media or how to improve your customer acquisition or something like that. And then make an Eventbrite or maybe make a webinar, right? We're in a webinar right now and many of us are in different locations. And, plan some initial content with Q&A or maybe get an expert speaker to come in and talk about it so that you're not even selling. And then tweet at all these people to come to the event. And then you have a really captive audience to develop a product. And we did that. We've done that for all of our products. All of our products have been developed by running classes where we had people do the job that we wanted the product to do, not using our tool, doing it the hard way, and then learning from what they found difficult and just getting their not telling them why we were doing it, getting their honest thoughts. So.
Yeah, thanks.
Clarification question: why do focus groups not work?
So you only want to do one-on-one interviews or at the most 2 people on your team interviewing 1 person. Focus groups don't work because of group dynamics. There's actually, in order to do focus groups, there's people that actually are trained on focus groups to do focus groups. If you're not trained on focus groups, you definitely shouldn't do them. I don't believe in them even if you're trained on them just because I don't know, I've just never heard of anything successful product being developed by fake focus groups. I've heard of a lot of product failures being come up by focus groups and market research. And when you're think about it, when you're in front of a group of people, the behavior changes a lot and the way people react is based on what other people are doing. Whereas if you're sitting with someone in private, the stuff that you get is really honestly what they think.
So 4 minutes left. Who has the last question for Trevor? Tinderbox wants to know, what's your favorite color, Trevor?
Black. That's not a color, though. Red.
Red, that sounds like a stressful color.
Yeah.
Jake from State Farm, asking about contact information. Trevor's Twitter handle is @TO.
Yeah. And if you're using the experiment board or you're using Quick MVP, email me. I'll definitely, try to help you, work on your experiment or, find customers for a landing page. So,
Oh,
or if
you're opening the floodgates there, man.
if you have any question in general, I'll definitely try to answer it as well. But if you're using the experiment board or Quick MVP, I'm like kind of almost doubly incented to.
And what's the URL for them to find Quick MVP or the experiment board?
Yeah, Quick MVP is just quickmvp.com. Our website is javelin.com, so Javelin, and that will link to Lean Startup Machine, to Quick MVP, and the experiment board. The experiment board is actually not live yet, so I'll send Murat a copy of it, and he can forward it to you guys.
Javelin.com. No E at the end of that?
Nope.
Okay. I feel like Dan Quayle trying to spell potato. All right. Trevor, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to get to hear you espouse about lean methodology. Everyone, I'm seeing people typing in the IM box thanking you. And any final comments or thoughts before we wrap up and these students continue on their 9-week journey?
It has been great, guys. I really honored to be here and to speak with you, and I wish you all a ton of success in your startup and in your career. And I'm sure this program is going to be, a really amazing experience, and I hope you guys all make the most of it.